Hello, everyone.
More.
How are you? How are you?
Good.
I don't know which one's your volume.
Very good. Very good. What's going on, sirs?
Hold on, Derek.
Hey, how you doing? How's everybody doing?
Good.
Good. Good. All right, we're just letting everybody in.
Yep.
All right, hey, Derek, okay, for me
Yep.
to get my PowerPoint in, how do I do
So I think we just need to like share.
it? Okay, share screen.
Yeah. If you could share the screen to see if it'll come up.
Okay, all right. All right, so
There you go.
Make sure you turn your mic off. So mute yourself.
I know.
What's up, Chris? How you doing?
I'm good.
All right, good.
What's up, Terry?
What's going on, Rick? How you doing, brother?
Good, man. How you doing?
Good, good. Hey, Jofta, how you doing?
Good.
Good, good, good. Your brothers there with you?
Yeah.
All right, awesome, awesome. Terry, how are you?
Doing good.
Good, good, good.
Yep.
Awesome. Hey, Wab. Hey, Demetrius.
Yeah.
Good, good. I see Ken. I see KP. Dr. Anderson, I see you there. Hey, Sabrina, how you doing? Very good, very good. All right, now we're right here at 11 o'clock.
did everybody hear and see me?
Yes.
Okay.
On the screen right now, we have your presentation on.
Okay, good.
Yeah, Brother Otis, how you doing, sir? I'm just adding more people coming in. All right, so people coming in. What's going on, Tyler? How you doing, sir?
Good.
All right, good. I see you joined on, Brother Otis. Felicia, how you doing?
Hello.
Hello, hello. And as people continue to join in, I'll keep on admitting folks. So wait for a couple more minutes to let people chime on in. So we'll start at like 11:05, and I'll continue to add people as they attempt to join.
Close the door. Marcus, it's already on. Yeah, they just saw you walk by.
Hey, Brother Otis, how you doing?
Hi, everybody.
Man, we gotta get more people on the call.
Yeah, they're coming. They're coming. Hold on a second.
You can bring the chair over.
Your microphone is in mute. Your video is off.
Yeah, we got 21 people so far. People are still coming in.
Yeah, man, go ahead and mute yourself until you have a question.
I'll go before 12. I mean, before 1.
Oh, no.
So, Otis, you're on,
I'll
right?
go before 1.
Go.
Yeah, they're back to greeting. But
yes.
I want to change.
Mhm.
Yes, I'm on. Yes.
Getting in the frame.
Brother Barry just came in.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. I don't want vibration anymore. Not this time.
Okay, hey, Brother Barry. Hey.
Yeah. Cannot hear it on the video.
Good. Hey, Sabrina.
Hey, kids, can we go ahead and mute your lines until it's time for the question?
I'll mute everybody. I just muted everybody. But I'll unmute everybody now. And then I'll unmute everybody now. Then when Dr. Sears starts, I'll mute everybody. Then when it's time for questioning and answering, then we'll open it up again for everyone to talk and to speak. All right, one more minute. Let people continue to try to join in.
I want you to listen to this title, please. It's COVID.
No,
Being safe.
I don't know.
A while ago, I don't know.
No, it's just skill though. You just gotta catch it.
Hey, Brother Bill, how you doing?
I'm good.
All right, good.
Good. Press that.
What's up, Bill? What's good?
All right, everyone. We're at 11:05 right now. So let's get started. I want to welcome everybody to today's call. This is 100 Black Men of Orange County Passport to the Future program, and this health and wellness session in our passport program that we have hiatus right now. But we have an esteemed guest on the line, one of our own brothers, Dr. Leon Seard, that is going to talk to us a little bit about this COVID-19 pandemic that we are all facing. He's going to give us a short presentation on his perspective from the medical industry and what we need to look forward to moving forward. And at the end of this call, at the end of his presentation, we'll open up the lines for any questions, answers, or concerns. But I think it's very vital that we all come together as a Passport family to talk about this very, very serious, important issue. And I want you guys all to know that even though we're not in the Passport sessions every 2 weeks, we're still here to support you, and we're still here to mentor you as much as we can. If you would like this forum, we can continue this in some form or fashion to continue to connect moving forward as things continue to progress with this COVID-19 scenario and as it is affecting our lives in so many different ways. So on that note, I would like to introduce our own and beloved Dr. Leon Seard.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes.
Good morning,
hear you,
and
brother.
happy Easter Saturday, I guess. It's kind of good to be here. I think the hope has been really to have this health and wellness session be a first aid CPR training session for everybody on site, but obviously that's not something we can do, so we'll save it for another time. What I want to do with this is make this kind of simple. I've kind of put a bunch of slides here together, and I'm trying to make it, doctors tend to get to Dr. E's when they're talking, so I tried to break it down and make it simple. And certainly if I'm getting too much over my head, let me know, and certainly during the question and answer period, we can kind of break some stuff down if necessary. I want to put a couple of disclaimers in here. One, this is not my wheelhouse. I'm a urologist, so my cousin teased me, said, I guess not too many not affecting your area too much. I would say that's true, but I still have to take care of patients every day, some of which that come in, and even a lot by this technology with telemedicine, and talking to patients just as if now I would be talking from the office or they were in their homes as you are now. And so I'm saying that, and also I may not have all the answers or the correct answers. I have no qualms about saying I don't know, but hopefully we'll give you a little better understanding by the time this is over with. So let's get going. All right, COVID-19. All right, so this is a map, I think from this morning or yesterday, that looks at how vast or how spread the virus is and the disease is across the world. There's estimate, I think right now, there are over 180 countries who have documented a instance of the COVID virus. The darker the color, the more cases that's there. And so you can see that here, the U.S. got the darkest, so we've got the most cases, and you know that there's France and Spain and Italy there, and Germany up there. So you know those are areas that have a high. We know everything is growing. So that's kind of just a global idea. This is a look at what it looks like in our country, and this is, I think, from this morning. You can see that New York has the most amount of cases, 175,000, and then New Jersey and surrounding areas, and we over here at 21,000 as of now. So that kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of the the prevalence of the numbers. Now, I should say that these numbers are probably going to, this is expected to be the surge week, at least here in California. And these numbers are going to go up as we have more testing. This is what, the confirmed cases, but as more testing is done, these cases are going to go exponentially up. Yeah. All right, let's look at the statistics now. As I said, as of, I think this is as of this morning, even though I put all the cases there were almost 2 million.
Don't put zip code Anaheim.
1% of those
Put Anaheim.
die. And if you
what?
point of the United States, we've got 500,000 cases. California has roughly 21,000 of that. And Orange County specifically has 1,100. And you can see the number of deaths. So all intents and purposes,
Send your link.
be good here in
So we're just gonna do one delivery, 3 or 4, maybe tomorrow or Monday.
Hey, Derek.
So Dr. Seard, real quickly, I'm going to mute everyone out, and on your screen, you'll have the ability to unmute yourself.
How much do you have to eat?
To hear you. Okay.
Okay. Let me. Where is my?
How would I go with you?
Move my. Let's see. How do I unmute myself?
Activate the account.
At the top, when you
first delivery, I'm gonna give you my $100.
Click on your screen, you see at the top.
What the hell is the?
Unmute. When I mute everyone out, you
someone they give you $5.
No, I know how that.
Okay, so
what's that?
Right now it just says mute. So you want me to do it now?
I didn't get anything.
After I mute everyone out, then you unmute.
Oh, never mind.
We'll be able to hear you.
Right. Well, just okay. You.
So the
tell me
background check
go.
will take 2 days. Probably do it on Monday.
This is apply, my nigga.
Yeah.
You want me to apply to work?
Yeah.
Whoever.
Somebody.
Okay. Okay now.
Yes.
Okay. Good. So I'm not sure where we went muted, but this is the statistics, the current statistics. I think I forgot to change the date this morning, but this is from this morning, the current statistics of cases worldwide, going on all the way down to us. So you can see we're not too bad as a county per se. All right. Why is it not? All right. So let's get to some nitty gritty. What is COVID-19? All right. So the COVID is really an acronym that stands for coronavirus disease. And the 19 refers to 2019 when it was discovered. It was for the first case was, I believe, December 19th in China. Now, what much of this you probably heard if you watched the news or whatever. The coronavirus that we're experiencing, dealing with now, is one of several coronaviruses that we have dealt with in the time. And actually, a number of the coronaviruses are really responsible for the common cold. So this is, not a new virus per se. And actually, the actual virus is the SARS CoV or CoV number 2, which means this is just another virus similar to the one that caused the SARS epidemic a number of years ago. And so that's kind of where it is. And it's called corona because it's kind of like the crown type shape and appearance and additions on the virus itself. It first appeared or I should say, it first was documented to having appeared in Wuhan, China, at an open air seafood market. Now, we don't know if it originated elsewhere, but that's where the first case was documented. And then they declared the pandemic. In other words, it's all over the place, and not just in one local area on March 11th. And this is just kind of, I threw this in for fun to give you a picture of what it looks like under the electron microscope. You can see the virus, you can see the various little protein extensions there that kind of give it its name. Now I put this in here because this is believed the source of the virus. Now coronavirus typically and a lot of viruses typically originate in animals, and they stay in animals, and they may go from animal to animal, but viruses can mutate, and if they mutate, they somehow develop the ability to go from animals to people. And when that happens, if it changes further, then it can go from people to people. And that's what we have here. It is believed that the original source of this is the Chinese vampire bat, that somehow that's how it started there in China. There may be another animal that it went from there to that animal. We don't know for sure, but as we know that information is really building or evolving about this whole thing. But that's kind of the source of the virus ultimately. Like in previous ones, like the H1N1, birds, you've got pigs, as original sources of the virus that kind of confined to animals. But because these viruses are kind of powerful enough or slippery enough to kind of mutate and jump hosts, it gets to us, and that causes the problem. So how does this virus spread? Basically, it's person to person, and it's spread as a droplet. And so in other words, the virus, when you cough or sneeze, or you're talking loud, I guess, and some of us kind of throw out all kinds of stuff when we're talking. But when that happens, the virus can be attached to that. Now, typically, those droplets are heavy enough so when it happens, when it comes out, they go straight to the ground within about 6 feet. And so that's why we talk about keeping your 6-foot distance. But the way it is spread is person to person through those activities or actions, and then getting into the eyes, the nose, and the mouth. And what typically happens is that either it's directly exposed to your eyes, nose, and mouth, or you touch something. So the surface is, you touch something that has the virus on it and it's still active, and then you take your hand or your finger and touch your eyes, your nose, your mouth, and then that's how it gets spread. So why is it so dangerous? Why is it so bad? You've probably heard that over the past decade, we average a number, probably more people die from the flu than from what we're dealing with. But there's a reason why this is so dangerous. Number one, it's a novel virus. In other words, it's new. We have not seen this before. So as a result, we have no protection against it. With the flu viruses, they've been around a long time. And so we can develop immunity. Even you may have heard the term herd immunity, which basically says that enough people get the disease between either having experienced it themselves or from vaccine, then immunization is developed, so that decreases the spread of the disease. So right now we have no immunity, and because this is so rapidly spread, it makes this really a real problem, because we have right now we have no way to really combat it, the disease itself. And what causes the deadly perspective is that it destroys the lung cells. So the virus does its damage by getting through your eyes, nose, and mouth, and then getting into your eventually into your lungs, and it causes significant damage to the breathing and the air sacs and the cells that are in the lungs, and that's what leads to death eventually from lung failure or in just overwhelming infection happening. So that's kind of why this virus is so dangerous, and also because it's getting, unlike some of the more deadly ones, say like Ebola, because people don't last very long with Ebola, you have a little bit of a way to kind of curtail it and cut it off, because you don't have as many people spreading it, because they're not doing anything, because they're getting sick very quickly. This is not the case. It can be spread with people who don't know they have it and have no symptoms. And so let's say, just for example, if you find out, if you got sick and you found out that you had it, well, all the several days before that, you could have been spread it to other people, even though you didn't have any symptoms of it. And that's what makes it so dangerous. All right, so who's the biggest risk for this disease there? Not surprisingly, people who are old. We typically say if you're over 65, certainly 70 over, you're more prone to this disease. And certainly if you have any kind of immunocompromise, if you're on medications, you've been on steroids, or you've got HIV, or any other some arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis issues, or sarcoid, or all these things that can cause some compromise of your body. Obviously, if you don't have the ability to fight, you're going to be more prone to coming down with the disease. Comorbidities, morbidity is just a term that kind of does with other disease sicknesses. So people who have high blood pressure, who have heart disease, who have diabetes, who have liver disease, who have kidney disease, all these people are going to be more prone to kind of succumb, or at least to be affected by this virus because of those things. And obviously, you're at risk if you've been in contact with someone who has the virus, or if you traveled in the area that was high with the virus. That's why the travel bans were put in place. Now, interestingly enough, and kind of sadly, is that you may have seen, especially over the past couple of days, they're talking about this disparity between African Americans versus everybody else. And it's kind of like, this is, I didn't get this big enough, but this picture kind of shows the difference. If you look at the yellow is our percentage in the population, and the red is our percentage with the virus. And so everything despite being a relatively small percentage of the population, we are affected much more significantly than the general population. And there are a number of reasons postulated for that. For the most part, you know that everything that that diseases, almost every major health problem in this country affects us worse than others. Part of that is a purely economic issue. Some of it is genetics. Some of it is the job related, and then access to healthcare. Access from the perspective of being able to be insured, and then access to actually having a doctor to go to. And when you're trying to worry about how you're going to put food on the table and keep a roof over the head, which is a more worry for us than others, taking care of your health, especially if you're not having any symptoms and you're talking about preventive health care, that goes a little bit lower on the priority list. And so as a result, you know, our health overall is not as good. So this is another example life as a Black person in America. All right, so one of the kind of good news about this thing is that basically, even though you got all those millions of people who have it, typically not many people are going to really get sick. So 80% are going to have mild symptoms or not have any symptoms, and they'll have it and they'll get immunity and they'll move on. Then you've got about 20% that get to moderate to severe symptoms, and then certainly a portion of that's going to have to be, or most of that's going to probably have to be hospitalized, and 20% of those who have to go for inpatient or in-hospital health care are going to be in the ICU. And the problem is, and this is kind of the bad thing, if you get so bad that you have to be in ICU with a breathing machine, then you've got probably at least a 50% likelihood of dying from this disease. But overall, the death rate is between 1% and 4%, and that's going to vary. The number's going to vary based on how many people are tested. So we don't really know the exact thing, but that's kind of right now, basically from the information we get from China, who's kind of gone through the worst stage of this already. They're giving us that information. As opposed to the flu is roughly about a 1/10 of this death rate. So there is, even though it may not think it's a whole lot of people, the difference between the two is significant. All right, so the incubation period, the time that you've got the disease or the virus and you don't really necessarily know it, but you still can be giving it to somebody else. So your symptoms basically start about 4 days after your exposure, and that can vary to as much as a week or 10 days. But most people, like that 80%, they're going to have flu-like symptoms. They're going to resolve over the 1 to 2 weeks. The worst time of it in terms of how it affects your health is going to be like in the second week of this time period. And so the pneumonia or the real lung infection typically occurs in the second week. And so that's kind of the time period, we're talking about the 2 weeks of quarantine and sequestering, all that kind of stuff. It's based on that time frame. What the data suggests is going to be after that time period. If you haven't gotten bad, you're probably not going to get really sick. All right, so what are the symptoms? Quickly, there's the 3 main ones are fever, cough, and trouble breathing. Now, but there are others that are not quite as common, but those are the most common. But others can be, you just got total body aches, you get tired, sore throat, and we're also finding that in a good percentage of patients, losing your sense of smell is a symptom. And a lot of times that tends to happen before you become otherwise symptomatic or have been tested. The GI symptoms, the nausea, vomiting, or diarrhea, those type of things, don't tend to happen as much comparatively speaking to other processes, but they do happen. And again, this whole thing is evolving, so we're learning more and more every day. All right, so just to kind of really compare things a little bit, here's just kind of a graph that looking at the flu versus cold versus this virus. And you can see there are some differences there. So with the flu and the COVID-19, you tend to get fevers, but you don't so much in colds. In colds, you don't get so much fatigue, but you do with the others two. The cough is not so much in the cold, but you can have it with other two. And you've got sneezing when you have a cold, but not so much with the other two. So there is a little bit of a difference. I like to say, kind of generally speaking, that the cold is more sore throat and sneezes and runny nose and stuff, and the flu gives you the high fever and aches, and the COVID is more of the trouble breathing aspect of things. But so there is a kind of a difference between the three. All right, so quickly moving on. How do we treat this? Right now, there's no real specific medication to treatment. So basically, the treat is the supportive therapy or symptomatic therapy. You take Tylenol, you drink lots of fluids, you kind of, just take care of yourself, eat well, you avoid toxins, smoking, alcohol, all those things you do to treat. We know that there are vaccines in the pipeline, but for a vaccine to come out or any medication to be to come out, it takes probably at least a year of a process to do this. So they get the drug that looks like it's going to work. We got to make sure it's safe, that it's not having a whole lot of side effects. Then we got to make sure it actually does work, and then you got to make sure it works on enough people to justify mass producing it. And the same thing with medications. You heard talk about a lot of different medications that are out there. Probably most prevalent is the anti-malaria drug, the hydrochloroquine. There has been some studies that show that it does work. There's been others that have not necessarily corroborated that, but it looks promising. But we still don't know. And what a lot of times, from the perspective of it being talked about from the talking heads, they're not really talking about, number one, the side effects. There can be some major heart and other side effects that go along with these medications. Number two is that at least hydrochloroquine is also used for people with lupus, and so those people now being infected because everybody's buying up and hoarding up this medication. And then lastly, the main use of hydrochloroquine is for malaria, and we know malaria is the number one worldwide number one disease that we have to deal with. Obviously, that's mostly an issue in sub-Saharan Africa and other areas, but so that's another issue. So basically, they're looking at medications that be used, but right now nothing is kind of basically clear that it's going to make the difference in that, despite what the talking heads and others might say at this point. All right, so I put this in here. You've heard the idea of flattening the curve. If you look at the top with the purple one, this is kind of basically what things would look like if we didn't do anything. The idea of flattening the curve is to bring this peak way down here. And the really rationale for that is because the healthcare system of this country cannot handle the presumed or expected onslaught. You hear Governor Cuomo talking about the challenges that New York has, everything, because the healthcare system is overrun and overwhelmed because of this. And so you want to flatten the curve. And what that basically does is make it so it's not so over. The real purpose of flattening the curve is to make it so it's not so overwhelming. So you have the healthcare system here. It's like you flatten the curve, the healthcare system is better able to handle it. But if we don't put all the protective and proactive and mitigating factors in, we're going to be up here. We're going to be in trouble. In this country, we've got, before this started, we had roughly 90 to 100,000 ICU beds in this country. And it was estimated that we would need at least double that if the projections came true. Some people have projected that there would be over 100 million Americans who would be affected with this virus. And if you even put that at a 1% death rate, that's still 1 million people dying in this country. In terms of statistics, it means a lot. When you think of people, that's a whole lot. And so the flattening the curve is really essential. Now, the thing that's not often talked about, flattening the curve does not change the number of people who get infected. What it does is it spreads it out. You can see the curve being flattened. It just spreads it out so that it occurs over a longer period of time, and we have a better way of handling it. But overall, the amount of people is going to be the same, and the time frame will be longer, but it will be able to be managed. It will be able to be managed a lot better than if we did not put in the mitigating factors. So the best way to kind of take care of this is prevention. And how do you prevent? You've probably heard it over and over again. Washing your hands, probably more than any other specific thing for disease in this country, especially communicable disease in this country, flu and colds and all that, is the washing of your hands. And so that's very important. Washing your hands, most of this virus will be taken care of by simple soap and water. Even if you just the physical action of you don't have any soap, the physical action of rubbing your hands together with water will do a whole lot than doing nothing at all. So using soap and water, and the thing Mr. Derek Ford asked me to put out a video about the proper way to wash hands, and I kind of couldn't find one that I was really happy with good enough to do it, but still may do it. But the most important thing is you're going to cover all surfaces of your hands, the palms of your hands, the backs of your hands, the fingers on all sides, the webs between the fingers, and especially the thumbs. The thumbs often get left out in the washing of the hands. And then you want to try to also get some attention to your fingernails, the tips of your fingers, so because germs can hide under there. Ideally, you want to do it over, do that over 20 seconds and rinse. You turn the water on, wet your hands, get the soap, lather it for 20 seconds, rinse it off, get a paper towel to use to turn off the faucet and dry your hands. The same process is for using hand sanitizer. Is the same thing. You use that. You can't, washing your hands is best. If you can't do that, then you use the hand sanitizer, because you're going to get most of get rid of all of the bugs, especially if it's at least 60% alcohol. It will take care of that, and there are plenty of tutorials online, YouTube, whatever, to show you how to make your own if need be. Then on the bottom left, we see is this idea of masking. That's important. We've had a trouble with masking originally. It's interesting, the last few days, the recommendation, or at least the rationale, has changed a little bit. So when it was first started, we said everybody needs to have, everybody should not be masking. We need to save the mask for the healthcare providers because there's a shortage. Well, now that's getting better, and we've got less of a shortage. And initially it was masking to prevent contracting the disease. Now masking is also even more likely to be so you don't pass it on to somebody else, even if you're asymptomatic, because you could still have it. And so masking is the other thing to include, because it's not a big issue with getting on clothing and stuff. That's not a big issue. If you were around it, you could go home, wash it, or put it in the hamper, and it would die there. And when you wash it, that takes care of it. And then lastly is the social distancing. I agree with some people that prefer the term physical distancing as opposed to social distancing, because we right now in this session right now, we are being social. We just aren't physically in each other's presence. So it's a physical distancing and not so much a social distancing. But as I said earlier in the talk, the 6 feet is basically because that's typically the distance that the droplets can go before they hit the ground and just kind of die there. But again, this is evolving, and so there's more and more information coming. Maybe it can go a little bit further. Maybe it can, it stays in the air a little bit longer and can get that way. So all those things are considerations, but that's why the protective measures are important. So lastly, I just kind of included this in here. The other day, the staff in my office did this. And so basically, stay safe, stay masked, keep fighting, don't give up. Together we can fight. Please wash your hands. And that's from UCI Urology, our department. And I think that's it. Any questions?
All right, now I appreciate that presentation, Dr. Sheard. That was great information. I know a lot of us have a lot of questions. I know there's a lot of things that are out there, a lot of things going around in social media on what to do, what not to do. A lot of speculation to this particular pandemic, and I know this may not be your expertise, but I would love to just have the open conversation in reference to some of the myths and things that have been going out there. And if you do have firsthand knowledge to clear some things up, that would be great. Because, I've heard a lot of things myself and just don't really know what to believe in reference to, the government's response and, what we're going to be doing moving forward and how long we're going to have a stay in home, order, and what kind of maybe the background of all of this and why things are happening in our community so prevalent. You did touch on that, but you know, I know there's a lot of questions surrounding that. So I'll open up the floor now and I'll unmute everyone. And so we can open up our calls, open up the questions. So if you do have a question, please just try to ask the question. And I know many will try to speak at the same time. So let's be cordial of everyone else that may have a question. So any questions for Dr. Seard, or any comments that anyone would like to make, like to discuss right now?
I have a question.
What's your name? Tell me your name, and so we know who you are.
It's Chris, and my question is that would it be okay if you're just hanging out with it's just you and one other friend, and you guys are being safe and washing your hands? Is that still okay?
So it's a very good question. The problem with that is, unless you're in the same house and you have been quarantined, you don't know what exposure the other person had. And so if you're going to hang out with just one other person, be aware of that, and you still keep the 6 people in. If you are
and Dr. Seard, this is what I'll do. I'll mute everyone out so you can answer the question, so we don't have a lot of the background noise. So I'm gonna mute.
Just got our background.
Yeah, I'll mute everybody out so you can answer the question again, Dr. Seard. You just got to unmute yourself.
Okay. Okay, so to answer the question again, with hanging out with your friend, understand that unless you guys have been in the same together for the last, couple of weeks, you don't know what exposure the other person has. And so you can have the virus and not be symptomatic of it, and thereby pass it on without knowing it. And so, and the person may be exposed and not really necessarily knowing it. So the hanging out, you have to take that under consideration. And if you were to hang out, you still want to keep the masking and the 6 and the distancing rule in mind, because again, it's all over the place, and so you don't know if you're coming. Your friend has been somewhere, and remember, one person, if they infect another person, and one of the scientific models says that for every person that has it, 12 people get infected. So if you look at the fact that right now we've had 1.7 million cases worldwide, you could make the extrapolation that there's close to 5 million people at the minimum who may be affected by this. And so to answer the question, you have to be mindful of those things. And if you do it, I'm not going to say what everybody's grown, you got parents around, everything, but be mindful of the way to prevent it is to adhere to the sheltering at home, and the distance, and the hand washing, and the masking.
All right, thank you for that answer, Brother Seard. Any other questions? Unmute yourself, please, and then ask the question.
Yes, it's Dylan. Why does it have to be particularly 6 feet apart? Like, I don't really understand that.
So let's make an analogy. If who's your favorite quarterback, Dylan?
I don't really have one, but I guess I'll say Russell Wilson.
Okay, so let's take Russell Wilson and say, if Russell Wilson can only throw the ball 60 yards in the air, if you are a defensive person, if you keep that receiver more than 60 yards away from Russell Wilson, he can't catch the ball. So let's imagine that the virus is a football. The football can only go as far as it can be thrown. And so if you stay beyond how far that football can go, then you're protected. And for this virus, the research suggests that it's 6 feet is how far that football can go. And so if you're beyond 6 feet from a person who may have it, you should be okay. We don't know that that's the final answer, but that's what's been the recommendation throughout this virus so far.
Okay, thank you.
More questions?
Yeah, I got a question, Otis. Doc Sear, can you reuse a mask? Is a mask used once and have to get rid of it, or can you reuse it several times?
So that's a very good question. I mean, one of the struggles that we in healthcare, because of the shortage of stuff, they're making us reuse stuff and everything. Ideally, most of the simple masks that are available for for the public are ideally a one-time use. But if they're not really sweat or they're not soiled, yeah, you could use them again. Especially if they're the fancier ones like the N95s, those things. But those things, as a rule, you don't necessarily need generally just being out in public. So the short answer is, if they're the disposal kind, should be one use only. Obviously, if you made your own, that can be reused.
Can you touch on the statistics for younger people under 18? How many cases?
I don't know those numbers right offhand. I do know I found something that said that it's more than what we think. I think there was statistics I saw just the other day that said that from middle of February to middle of March, that 40% of the people infected, I think, were between the ages of 20 and 54, and even about 15% or so for that age. It's not why the young tend to be better. Maybe it's because of their health, they're overall healthier than the rest of us, but it's not. It's false information to suggest that just because you're young, you won't get the disease. And there have been deaths recorded from teenagers from this disease. Now, overall, if you kind of really toned it or coned it down, you'd probably see that those that have died, or even older, but certainly the young ones died, there is some underlying other health problem that maybe predisposed them to being affected by the virus more than would have otherwise been expected. But the take-home point is, don't assume just because you're young that you can't get it.
And then this is Terry, and I wondered if also maybe some of the young weren't getting it because they're also not at school. I'm wondering if all the schools still stayed in session, then what those numbers would truly be then.
Well, you're exactly right. And that's kind of one of the reasons why probably, at least so far, even though this week coming up, we're supposed to have the surge here in California, is why we have been, comparatively speaking, less devastated than New York. We learned from New York, and Governor Newsom put in the stay-at-home orders and shutting everything down early enough, and that is true. But beyond that, if you still get infected, it's still possible. But yeah, the simple fact that everything, because it has to do with the population density and exposure. And so if people aren't getting in contact with one another, especially in large groups, then the less likely for it to be spread. So yes, on its face, the schools being closed has a lot to do with that. But it's still, if it's not exclusively, it means even if the schools are closed and a young person got it, does not mean that one, they couldn't get it, or that two, that it's impossible for them to die from it.
And then Dr. Seard, quick question for you. I've been hearing and I read in a couple of articles that even though the COVID-19 numbers are going up across the country, the recovery rates are still the same and still very high. I've seen scales and articles saying that it's as high as 97 to 99% of individuals that do contract the COVID-19 virus will recover in some point in time and will not be ultimately fatal. How much information do you have on that data?
So that I don't have specific other than just the general idea that we do know that at least 80% people, excuse me, are going to have it and not really have anything more than mild symptoms. But again, that it depends on where the data collection is being done and what's been done to help mitigate the virus. So overall, we say that the expected death rate is going to be like 1 to 2%, and that those numbers that you cited are consistent with that. But remember that the numbers of the cases are going to go up as we do more testing. And so that's inherently, you got more people being tested, so more people may have it, but because that denominator is getting larger and larger, the number of people dying then as a percentage gets smaller and smaller. And so hopefully the goal going forward is that we have a much more significant testing of people so we know who has it, but also more importantly is in terms of getting the economy and the country rolling again, getting the serology to know what is your antibody titer. So in other words, if we can detect or we can prove that you have immunity to it. If you do, then okay, that's people who can go back to work, people who can go back to helping people, all those types of things, because we know, okay, you have, and there's no evidence so far that once you have it, you're going to get reinfected. Though there is a concern that this thing may be seasonal, just like the flu. So just because we get through it right now, it's nothing to say that we won't get another course of this, 8 months from now. And we still would not have had a vaccine quite yet. So that's why all the testing needs to be done as far as who has it and who has immunity, so that we can say, okay, these people are good to get back to work and get the country rolling again.
Got it.
So, doctor, based on your background and your professional opinion, what are some things we can do with our diet right now to help with our immune system? I've heard of eating limes and turmeric and ginger, and what are some things that you can suggest to us as we prepare meals, things that we can eat to help with our immune system, boost our immune system?
So it's a great question. I would say overall, it's like, I deal with prostate cancer and everything, and people ask me, what can I do to help prevent it from a diet perspective? And I usually tell them that a heart-healthy diet is a cancer diet. So anything you would normally do to keep yourself healthy, like drinking lots of water, avoiding the toxins of alcohol and tobacco, fruits and vegetables, fresh fruit, avoiding, the sugary stuff and all those things. The common sense things. In terms of specific things, I can't say exactly what specific items are going to be the best things. Some will say vitamin D, some will say certainly vitamin C. All those things certainly have some import in helping to your immune system. But I always throw this caveat out when we're dealing with natural things. Clearly, certainly in our culture, in our history, we use all kinds of things that Big Mama and our great grandparents are going to use to say this will be good for you. We have to remember, number one, that what the environment and life was like then is different than it is now. Number one. Number two, anything you get from the GNC or anything like that, understand that those products that you get from online or you see on television, like those products are not regulated. So that means that there's nothing that says that what the label there's no guarantee that what the label says is there is actually in that product. Two, nobody knows what is the exact amount of that product is going that it will be needed to make that product work, if that product works at all. And there's a lot to say about the placebo effect as well. So I hate to give you a kind of a roundabout answer, but I think the easiest way is to be healthy. I was in the grocery store yesterday. I had to laugh because all the fresh produce area was fully stocked. And those are the things that will probably going to be better in making us overall healthy, and secondarily, as a result, increase our immune system.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say, Dr. Sear. I've heard a lot of things about just things that will boost your own immune system, so your body can take care of itself is the best alternative. And maybe not medication, but just natural things that will make your body stronger to fight off all disease and virus that may come about.
Water, exercise, sleep.
Hey, Doc.
Yeah.
I heard on television the other day, they said zinc. What's the mystery there?
So yeah, I don't know the exact. I mean, it's something that the way the zinc works on cellular level that kind of throws it in. I don't know the specifics for this particular disease, but different ones you find, okay, this can work. But I don't know if there are enough studies out there that say definitively what it is that does it and what's the right amount of zinc to take. So I don't have a real exact answer for you.
Yeah, I've heard zinc too, Brother Otis. I've heard zinc and vitamin C, and even lemons. I heard drinking warm water with lemons in it. Lemons do a lot of great for the body. Just a lot of natural things that's beneficial. Anyone else on the line that's nutritionalists that are into healthy options to take care of the body, like citrus fruits, grapefruits, oranges, tangerines, lemons, limes, and clementines. I just pulled this up on my phone.
Yeah. All that stuff is good. Now I have to throw it out to the caveat, which is funny because from my specialty, people who have irritable bladders, they have to go to the bathroom all the time, especially ladies, or frequently or urgently, or men who have prostate irritation problems, the citrus fruits make things worse. So we know that alcohol, caffeine, carbonated beverages, spicy food, citrus fruit are all things that can irritate the bladder and the prostate.
That's right.
So while those things may give you some benefit in terms of your immune system and your resistance, if you have problems with those areas, things might get worse.
And Doc, I actually have one more question. This is going to be my last. How long would it take for this whole thing to be cured?
So that's a very good question. So if you've heard Dr. Fauci talk on any of the press conferences, that's going to be based on the virus and our best, and on us to the extent that what are we going to do to try to make this virus slow down. And so at some point, it will get to the point where everybody has been in the time frame long enough that, it's not going to be problematic anymore. And even when and the problem, and I've deliberately tried to refrain from any political implication here, but the trouble with making decisions based on a purely economic or fiscal or political perspective is that we are ignoring the epidemiological or medical perspective of it. So we have to be very careful. In terms of when that will happen, it's hard to say. But if you look at what has happened, the wave like China went through, because they're on the other side of that curve now. We're talking probably another couple of months before we can say, hey, this is pretty good. But again, that varies, and that's a matter of what we do to kind of curtail the thing.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And just to add a further political thing, just so people have armamentarium, President Obama went through 3 pandemic episodes, and in each one they did a post-mortem evaluation, say, hey, where did we screw up? Where could we have done better? And when at the transition between the administrations, they gave the new administration, hey, this is what you need to be concerned about. And even I think I saw something online at the press conference of President Obama talking about it. But the current administration didn't follow that advice. And to the extent that there were people who were listening, those people are no longer in the administration. And so, and furthermore, even as recently as a year ago, they did a mock, the administration did a mock pandemic, and to see what would happen. And the very issues that we have been dealing with, this has been going on, are the issues that they discovered when they went through that mock pandemic, but they weren't adhered to. And like before in the previous pandemics, we had medical teams and experts and epidemiologists that went actually on the site of the issues to figure out, okay, what needs to be done. They got ahead of the curve, and we didn't do that to the same extent as had been done previously. And so that is something to kind of be mindful of. It's kind of, at this point, it's a moot point because it's done and the steps have now been taken. But because we have followed it, if you even look historically, go back at the Spanish flu, I shouldn't even say the Spanish flu, but that 100 years ago, if you compare, I think, St. Louis and Philadelphia, what they did in response to it, the devastation of the effect was directly related to the fact that you did the separation, and that one did and the other didn't. And even I also read in a article that talked about even during the Black Plague, perhaps one of the reasons why Henry VIII did not get it is because he kept himself isolated inside of the castle. But,
hey, Doc.
Yes.
A young man, Ryan Wright, he said he was having problems with his audio. He asked the question, do we need to use an N95 mask or are bandanas okay?
You don't need an N95 mask. That's typically for people who are going to have direct exposure to people who either are known to have the virus, or like if I were in the hospital and I was doing an intubation, putting a breathing tube down somebody, or looking down their lungs, or I know that they get a cough and I'm going to be right, in front of them just because of the nature of what I have to do, then that's more appropriate there. But as in the general population, no, a bandana that's all you got. Use that because it will be a barrier. But they're online on how to make your own, and then obviously the simple surgical masks are going to be plenty.
That's great. I found a quick list of 15 things that can boost your immune system. Let me rattle these off really quickly. And Doc, if you know of this to not be kosher, definitely let me know. I talked about the citrus fruits already. You commented on that. Red bell peppers, broccoli, garlic, ginger, spinach, yogurt, almonds, turmeric, green tea, papaya, kiwi, poultry. But I'm a proponent to try to get away from meat, but I'm not there yet. But poultry is on this list. Sunflower seeds and shellfish. And I know some people are allergic to shellfish too. So these are 15 things that are supposed to help boost your immune system.
So I mean, most of that I would probably, just based on experience, would say, and I would say they're appropriate. The problem is I wouldn't necessarily put poultry and shellfish on that list. Um,
Right.
Maybe, some of the things in other fish. And you've noticed a lot of that is natural occurring fruits and vegetables.
Right.
And that is the underlying thing. We don't know. It's not always. It's usually some particular chemical or property in those foods that kind of gives them that benefit. But again, as I said before, we don't know what is the right amount of any of those things to be taken. And so I certainly would say most of that list I would agree with. But the problem is we have no way of knowing, okay, what's the amount of turmeric? What's the amount, how many oranges should you eat a day?
Right. Right.
How many servings of green vegetables are actually going to be beneficial in the long run? And I don't know that, that data may be out there. I just certainly don't know off the top of my head.
Sure.
But,
Sure.
Hey Doc, would warm weather slow down the disease transferring, or does weather have no impact?
So that is the feeling that is, but I don't know if that's foolproof. It's been proven to be foolproof just yet, because obviously we've got this disease all over the world in over 180 countries, and not all those countries have cold weather right now.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question.
Have any more questions, guys?
Yeah. No.
I like the charts. If we can get a copy, I appreciate it. We share.
Yeah. I have a copy of the PowerPoint that Dr. Seard shared with us today, and I'll send it out to the email list so everyone can have it. If there's no more questions that we would like to discuss or talk about now.
Hey, Derek.
Sure, yes.
This is Doug. Hey, before we hang up, I just want to thank everybody who participated, the students, the parents, all the 100 members that are on this. Your input really made this so valuable. This information is important, and obviously it's very timely. I want to thank Dr. Seard for the research he did and his presentation, and I want to thank you, Derek, for pulling this all together. Just want to say that as president. Thank you all.
No, absolutely, brother. My pleasure.
My pleasure. And let me throw in there one more thing that, a lot of this information is you can get online, and I would recommend be careful of where you get information. So you want to get information from reputable medical sources. And I would say the best places to go at this point are the CDC site, cdc.gov. You can also go to Johns Hopkins, their site, because they've got a really good, some of the graphs I use are from them and the CDC. And there's also a website called Worldometer, which can give you up-to-date statistics that's updated, I think, every 12 hours or something like that.
What, Dr. Seard? It's not Facebook and Instagram?
Well, hey, you can do that if they're quoting one of those sources.
Right, exactly. And I have to admit, you know what I'm saying, I'm guilty. I've been swayed left and right and then some reading all that crap, and I just told myself I'm gonna stop reading it.
Yeah, and I mean, you have to be, in honesty, each of us has a little bit of conspiracy theorists in us, and especially as Black folk, we have good reason to have it. But you want to, make sure you do your due diligence and say, okay, what mitigates against this argument? Because what happens is that, and that's the problem with what we have experienced here in this country, when you are withheld information, and right. The surest way to keep people enslaved is to withhold information from them. And so here's the thing: if you don't get information, or you get disinformation or misinformation, it is devastating. And that's kind of where we are. If you don't have proper information, you start making up stuff. And you take a little bit that may be true and mix it with stuff you don't know to be true. You'd assume because you heard from your uncle, your cousin that works in the government and all that kind of stuff. And it just kind of makes for a bad thing. Yes, there's some stuff that perhaps we don't know or are not privy to, and those of you who have worked in government can certainly attest to that. But we just have to be careful. We need to vet everything that we use as or pass off as true and accurate.
Hey, Doc, there seems to be a group of people that are very excited to get the economy back running versus really finding out what this problem is and how to solve it. Well, I mean, I know there's an urgency because the unemployment rate is so high, but it seems like we're willing to sacrifice, common sense or people's health just to get the economy, spurred back. You got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, so there are some countries, I've not seen the article myself, but Angela was telling me that she read that some of the other countries did not, I think they guaranteed everybody would have continue to get paid despite the devastation of this or whatever previous things. And I think it's a matter of will. Just like the disparities within us, those disparities didn't suddenly get there. That's been the case for generations, that everything that affects average Americans affects us more devastatingly. So somebody says, when America has a cold, we got the flu. And that's really true. And the fact that I'm glad this is being brought up. And the responses, I'm very, very skeptical, pessimistic about responses, because some were saying this is going to be a good way to usher in Medicare for. Well, the truth of the matter, at least from my perspective, that even though that will be good for basically taking care of health problems after the fact, Medicare for all would do nothing at this point to, it would have done nothing to change this pandemic. The virus was there, was coming, and and people who really get sick are still going to go to the emergency room. And even before, if you don't have insurance, you still go to the emergency room and you get taken care of. But it's just a matter of the will. You say, okay, we said that these rescue packages that Congress is putting out, we can suddenly do this, but yet we don't find the will to make sure schools are equipped and with infrastructure, that healthcare is there, that we do common sense gun control. So it's a matter of the will and where it is from our perspective, and even as the young people, is that becoming engaged politically, because our politics is local. So if we focus on what's happening locally and we send people from our districts to Congress who have like-minded, then the laws are made in Congress. So it doesn't really matter who's in the White House. And too many people get focused on who's going to be in the White House when it really doesn't matter, because we saw that we had 8 years of President Obama and how much got blocked because he didn't have control of the Congress. And the only reason why we've had some oversight now is because the Democrats own the House, but yet Mitch McConnell has over 300 bills on his desk that he hasn't put through, that the Democratic House has sent over. And so I'm very skeptical about the push, because it's, when you think about it, and I don't know what the numbers are, the expectation of what was being done, the effect on the economy for this time period. Well, then take that and take about what the profit that corporate America would have made, has made in the previous quarter. And it might be able to balance out, because there is some balances. Okay, they're not doing anything, but we're not needing, we're not doing as much. You look how clear the air is in LA, because nobody's driving. All those things are kind of are going to variables, but people are concerned about their own personal fortunes and what happened, really not about the people. And the only way that's going to change is that we, keep rising up, but we send people who want to actually legislate those types of changes.
Thank you, Doc.
Makes sense. Thank you. So anyone else have anything else we'd like to discuss or talk about while we're on the line? All right. If not, once again, thank you, Dr. Sear. Thank you, all the brothers and members from 100 Black Men of Orange County. Thank you all passport students and parents for being on this call. This is a very important call that we have, and I would like to potentially do this again sometime very soon. If we can't come together, at least we can come together this way and stay connected and move forward from here. So I just wish everybody good health, good spirits, stay mentally sharp and through this pandemic. And if you need us, we're all a phone call away. So always know that. And thanks for everything. All right, thanks.
Thank you, guys. Happy Resurrection Day.
And happy Easter. Thank
Happy
you.
Easter to everyone. Happy Easter.
Bye.
Thank
you. Good. Very good.
Take care.
All right.
Peace out.
All right.
All right. I'm out, Derek.
Okay. Thanks, Dr. Sid.
All right.
Great presentation. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, man. All right.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Bye now.
Hey man, send me the voice,
Brother Double O, I appreciate you.
man.